Okay, state which theorems, if any, must be parallel. State the postulate and theorem that justifies your answer. So if you take a look at these two angles, 48 and 48, they are alternate interior angles, aren't they?
Yeah.
To what lines and what transversals is what's key is you must state that line EF is parallel to line FG, because of alternate interior angles. Two lines cut by a transversal, and the transversal I will draw in blue, okay, is HF, okay, alternate interior angles. Now, on the next one, take a look at this. What could I state here? Is 70, first you want to look at 70 and 110. That adds up to 180, right? So I know that these two are supplementary, don't I? Mm-hmm. Okay, because that totals 180. They are, if I look at these two lines, and this AB is a transversal line AB, I have same side interior angles, don't I?
Oh, yeah.
So then line BC, and don't forget to write your line over top of it, is parallel to line AD because of same side interior angles are supplementary. Now what is 70 plus 112? That's 182. So you cannot say that AB is parallel to DC, you see? Because they are not supplementary. Okay? Now over here we have two lines cut by a transversal. Okay, are they parallel?
Yes.
Yes, why?
Because the line's perpendicular.
That's
To
right.
the same line out.
Okay, a line that passes two lines is perpendicular to one and perpendicular to the other. Basically, you could also say corresponding angles, couldn't you?
That's true too.
Okay, because they are corresponding angles. So we could state which segments must be parallel. We would state line X or XY segment is parallel to segment LM. Some of you are not being careful with your notation. These are line segments. Over here we had lines. And sometimes in your homework you're just writing the letters without the line or line segment over it. It means a number. Don't forget that, okay?
Will they be wrong? If you
Yes, they will on a test. I did not take them off for your homework, but they will on a test.
Wait, what?
Okay? If you do not put the line over top or the segment over top when they're asking, you're talking about a number. Now let's take a look over here. 46, 44 are alternate interior angles, aren't they, if I was talking about these two lines, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they are not congruent. So those two lines can't be parallel, can they?
They can't be.
No. All right, so let's take a look at the other two lines. All right, let's take a look at the green lines, line ML and line JK. Can they be parallel? Well, 80, what do I know is true? I don't know anything, do I?
No.
Is this, what is the total over here? 90, right? So I know that this is a 90-degree angle. Okay? But I know that this is 88 over here, and 90 and 88 do not total 180, so those would be same side interior on that if this were a transversal. Okay? All right, now let's take a look at this. I have 46, 46, 88. What is this angle down here? Can I tell what this one is down
44.
here? Is it 44?
Mm-hmm. Because the
Okay. So if this is 44 and that's 46, those aren't parallel. But I don't think either one of those are parallel. Okay?
So
It says, if any, don't forget that our directions said if any. So even if I was looking at this being 44 and 46, those alternate interior angles are not equal. And neither are these two alternate interior angles if I look at the blue lines. So those are not parallel. Nothing's parallel over there. Okay, let's take a look at number 5. All right, I have some lines going on here, and I have a transversal. Lots of different lines. Let's look at this line and this line. Okay? If I look at those two lines and I look at this segment AD being a transversal, try to block out everything else that you can see. Do you see anything?
No.
The 53.
53 and 53, don't you?
Yeah.
What kind of angles are they?
Corresponding.
Corresponding angles, right. So I can say here that GB, line segment, they're talking about line segments in the directions and I missed that. But line segment GB and line segment FC are parallel because of corresponding angles. Now if you take a look at the other two lines, let's look at this line. Whoops, didn't want to do that, right?
Delicious.
Okay, I gotta undo that. Let's undo a few things here and get back to where I want to look at. Now let's take a look at the other two lines. What about lines? Boy. Line segment EC and line segment FC. Are they parallel if this were a transversal?
No.
Why not? Because,
One's 44 and one's 45.
that's right, 44 and 45 corresponding angles are not equal, so those two are not parallel. Okay? Now let's take a look at the next figure. We have several lines being cut by several transversals all over the place. And what you're looking for is you're looking for some same side interiors being supplementary or alternate interiors. Whenever you see this Z-like shape and you see two angles congruent like this, you're thinking alternate interior angles, right? So I can tell right away that ED, line segment ED, is parallel to line segment BC because of alternate interior angles.
Wouldn't that
Okay.
then be the same for GF and ED? Or
Well-
FG? Because they're the same thing.
Yeah, let's look at this. But, all right, now I can also say that because I also have this other alternate interior angles. Look at this line with this transversal. I have the same thing going on here, don't I? So FG is parallel to ED, right?
Which makes FG parallel to BC.
That's right. Parallel is also parallel to BC because it's parallel to a line that BC is parallel to.
What about BA? Would that
Well, let's take a look at those. Let me erase some things here, and let's take a look at BA. Whoops, a little too far. Let's take a look at these two lines. Line segment FD, line segment BA.
Is that corresponding?
And is it corresponding? Let's extend them a little bit so that we can see what we're talking about. What about 40 plus 35 if I look at this transversal? That's 75, isn't
And
it?
the other one's 75.
Ah, there's 75.
Alternate interior.
So I also know that line segment FD must be parallel to line segment BA. Okay? All right. Next, I'm going to move this thing out of the way. Okay?
This one is confusing because there's nothing like down here next to the 10, like there's no letter thing.
Well, if there's no letter, you have your lines, you have all the significant angles that they want to talk to you about are already labeled. You also have the lines, J, K, L, N, M, L, N, P, sorry. Okay, so it says, in the exercise, some information is given. Name the lines, if any, that must be parallel. Now remember, when you do number 7, you cannot use what you've learned in 7 for 8. Okay? If angle 1 is congruent to angle 8, you can't use that information as given for number 8 or number 9. Okay? You can only use the given information on that one problem. So if angle 1 is congruent to angle 8, mark it as such. Okay? If angle 1 is congruent to angle 8, look at they are, what kind of angles are they?
Alternate interior.
Alternate interiors. I'm drawing that S in there, aren't I? Okay? Well, think about it says name the lines that must be parallel. So let's name the lines. if those are alternate interior angles, they are alternates to J and K, right? So J is parallel to K for number
Do
7.
you have to put lines, like line on top of it or anything, or just leave the letters?
You just use the letters.
Alright.
It says you can name those lines, okay? Whoops. I don't want to do that. Okay, so J is parallel to K. All right, 4 and 6 are congruent. Now let's forget about 1 and 8 now. Let's look at 4 and 6. If 4 and 6 are congruent, well, obviously 4 and 6 are congruent, right? Because they are what kind of angles?
Vertical.
Vertical angles. Does that tell us anything?
No.
Does that mean L and K could be?
No, because L and K. You're thinking L and K parallel? How can they be parallel if they're
Oh, yeah.
intersecting,
Duh.
right?
Oh.
Okay? All right, so vertical angles aren't going to get you anything unless you have a third angle in there, okay? They're not going to tell you anything that's parallel because they're not alternate interior, they're not same side interior or exterior, and they're not corresponding, okay?
So there's no.
That's right, nothing. If any, remember? They're saying if any. Okay, now, number 9, 10 and 7 are congruent. So if 10 and 7 are congruent, what two lines, what kind of angles would they be if they had two lines that form the angles in a transversal?
Is that corresponding?
Corresponding angles, right? And if they're equal, what do we know is parallel?
They're lines.
J and K, okay? These two must be parallel because those are corresponding with that as a transversal, okay?
Wait,
All right.
wait.
Measure of angle 3 plus the measure of angle 4 is equal to 180. So if 3 plus 4, if I have 180 degrees in here between these two angles, if they total 180, what do I have? They're supplementary. They are what kind of angles between these two lines and this transversal, right? So they can be, J and K can be parallel again from that.
So is this number 10 now?
That's number 10. Okay, number 11, angle 5 is congruent to angle 3. If I have 5 congruent to 3, and if I draw in the two lines that are forming the angles with the line that I think is a transversal, what would I draw? I would have to draw J and K again, and this is the line that forms the other side of those two angles. So you draw the lines that form the angles that they're talking about. Now I have two lines that are parallel because of what? Corresponding angles. Okay?
So what were they?
J and K are parallel. Okay? Angle 6 and 7. 6 and 7 is congruent to 7. If 6 and 7 are congruent, what does that tell you?
They're not.
They're same side. Wait, no.
No, they're not.
Are same side interior angles always congruent? Mm-mm. No, they're not. So that doesn't tell us anything. It only would tell us something if they totaled 180, right? If they were supplementary.
Yeah.
Okay? All right. Now let's go on to the next section. Next diagram. If angle 1 is congruent to angle 3, angle 1 congruent to angle 3.
Corresponding.
They are corresponding to what segments? NO, segment NO it would be parallel to segment PS, right? And what would be the transversal?
OR.
Segment OR. Does everyone see that?
Do we have to write down the transversal?
No, I just wanted to write it down because I want you to make sure that you can pick out the transversal and the two parallel lines, because as these figures get more and more complicated, you're going to have a harder time. That's why I draw them in color for you so that you can see that those angles that they're talking about are formed by 3 lines or line segments. 2 of them might be parallel and the other one's the transversal. They are sides of those angles. Okay? Now, let's go on to the next one. Angle 1 and angle 4 are congruent. So now we have these two angles are congruent. They are on opposite sides of one line, and they're formed by 3 lines, right? So I want to highlight the lines that they're formed by, right? The line segment is this one, and there's the transversal. So if they are congruent, what do I have? Alternate interior angles, so I know that segment NO is parallel to segment PS. Okay? Okay, number 2 is congruent to 5. 2 and 5 are congruent.
They're corresponding?
They are corresponding angles to, here's a transversal, and here are my 2 lines, right? So they are corresponding angles, so OR, segment OR, must be parallel to segment TS. Okay? Angle 3 and angle 5 congruent. Angle 3 congruent to angle 5. Does that tell me anything? No. One's on the outside, one's on the inside, if you think about these 2 parallel lines, if they were parallel, and that doesn't mean anything. And even if you looked at these 2 lines, okay, they're not even formed by the same line and the other 2 lines. Okay, so they are nothing.
They're nothing.
Well, that gives us nothing, is basically what I'm saying here. Angle 4 is supplementary to angle 5. So these 2 together, when they say supplementary, draw a little arc in there and put 180. They total 180, right? Now, what does that tell me?
That doesn't really say.
They're the same side of this transversal right here, PS, right?
So 4 and 2 equals 180?
That's not what I'm thinking of. I'm trying to find out what lines would be
Line
parallel.
segment OR and TS are.
Yes. Line segment OR is parallel to line segment TS,
Oh,
and there's your transversal. Okay? Okay, here's a review, ways of proving lines are parallel. Let me see if I can move this over here, okay? Proving lines are parallel. We've just shown that corresponding angles are congruent. Remember, corresponding angles, if I have 2 parallel lines cut by transversal T, corresponding angles are these 2, or these 2, or these 2, or I guess I'll use black, these 2. Okay? So match up the colors. That's corresponding angles. Show that a pair of alternate interior angles are congruent. Well, if I have 2 lines cut by a transversal T, okay, and I have alternate interior angles, that means you can take these 2 lines and you can do this, or you have this angle congruent to this angle. Okay, you can draw that S in there between 2 lines, kind of like a curve, okay? Show that a pair of same side interiors are supplementary. So if I have 2 lines cut by a transversal, and these 2 total 180, or these 2 total 180, then I have parallel lines. Okay? In a plane, show that both lines are perpendicular to a third line. So if I have 2 lines, and they are both perpendicular to this line, then they are parallel to each other. Okay, show that both lines are parallel to a third line. Okay, is our last one, and this is the one that you're going to forget. Okay, if I have 2 lines and I have a third line, okay, and I say that this line is parallel to this line, and I say that this line is parallel to this line, then I know that these 2 are parallel to each other. Okay? I'm just going to put some big fat ones on there. Okay? That's just a review of those 5 ways. So you have 5 ways to prove lines are parallel. Do you know what they are? Corresponding, same side interior, supplementary, alternate interior is congruent. If a line is perpendicular to both lines, then they are parallel to each other. Or if two lines are parallel to a third line, then they are parallel to one another. 5 methods. Okay, we're going to use those 5 methods because we're going to do some proofs. As soon as I get on to the next page, okay? Example 1. Now, a lot of times in these proofs, there are more than one way to do these. And it says right here that 2 proofs are possible, which is why they gave you 1 proof and then a second. They gave you all the statements and reasons in shuffled order and wanted you to figure it out. So in this case, let's take a look at this first proof. It says complete the following proofs of example 1. So the first proof that we have, they're supplying some of the statements and we're going to supply the reasons. Okay? So angle 3 is supplementary. Let's take a look at what we have. First of all, remember, whenever you do a proof for your homework, don't expect me to look at my book to figure out what the figure looks like. When you do a proof, you have to do this part right here. Okay? That's part of the thing. I did not take off for it this time, but you really have to do that. Angle 3 is supplementary to angle 5. So let's say that. Angle 3 is supplementary to angle 5. That means 3 plus 5, the measure of 3 plus 5 is equal to 180, right? I know that that's the reason, but I'm just looking at the figure. And we're asked to prove that BD, line segment BD is parallel to FE. Let's take a look at BD and FE and see what we think. Here's BD and here's FE, okay? Now, what we really would like to know is, if we know we could say that those 2 are parallel if we had 4 and 5 adding up to be supplementary, right? But we don't have that. We have 3 and 5 being supplementary. So the first thing, as Joe says, yes, this is given. Okay? The next one. 3 plus 5 is equal to 180. Well, 3 is supplementary to 5, and the measure of 3 plus 5 is equal to 180. Isn't that the what? Definition of not vertical.
Supplementary, sorry.
Definition of supplementary. Okay? Yes,
Did we skip 18 through 22?
probably. But I'll go back to it. Okay, I want to get through these proofs, okay? Now, what are we going to say? What are we going to say if we have a reason that says vertical angles are congruent?
Angle 3 is, the measure of angle 3 is congruent to the measure of angle 4.
Okay, but we want congruent. We want congruent. Remember, they're using the congruent. So we don't want to talk about the measure necessarily. We want to say angle 3 is congruent to angle 4. Okay, the reason we're not using measure is because the reason says vertical angles are congruent. And when we're talking about congruence, we're not talking about measure. We'd have to use another statement in there about the definition of congruency. Okay, so when they say congruent, vertical angles are congruent, angle 3 is congruent to angle 4. Well, now, since they are congruent, which means more than equal, right? Measure of 4 plus 5 is equal to 180. Well, why is 4 plus 5 equal to 180?
The same side interior angles.
No. Not same. No, we're trying to get there. We're trying to get there. We're trying to get to the point where those 2 lines are parallel. But what we're saying is, look at 3 plus 5 equals 180.
It's substitution.
But 3 is equal to 4, so I'm going to take 4 and put it where? Right in this statement and rewrite statement 2 with 4 in there, right? So what's that called?
Substitution.
Substitution. Now angle 4 is supplementary to angle 5.
It's same side
No.
interior.
No. Why is 4 supplementary to 5? Because I just, think about where you came from. You just said that 4 plus 5 equals 180. So what's the next logical thing to say is 4 is supplementary to 5. Why? Because the definition is supplementary, or we can just write reason 2. Because you can always refer to one of your previous reasons. Okay? Now, what can we say finally?
BD.
Line segment BD is parallel to line segment FE, and here's where you want to state why those two lines are parallel. Two lines cut by a transversal, same side interior angles are supplementary. Then the two lines are parallel, right? And I'm not going to write all that out, but what I'm going to do is say same side interior angles supplementary. That's INT here. Okay?
Can I go to the bathroom real quick?
Did I
I
tell you?
remember that.
Okay, let's go on to the next one. Now your parents are going to know what you do in math class, right?
I pay attention.
When
I pass my
they
math
listen to
test. I have
the
an amazing
things,
math
they're going to
teacher.
know that we all have to leave.
My math teacher is amazing. She has a
Okay,
great
let's
class.
go. All right, now we're going to take the same exact proof, only we're going to do it a different way, right? The same proof can be done multiple ways, and that's okay. Because when you get to the point where you're writing proofs yourself and I'm reading them, I'm going to see, are you following a logical progression through the proof? Are you using something that you've already said and using rules that we've learned, okay? So here's another way of doing this proof. Okay, in this case, we still want to get the two lines parallel, but if angle 2 is congruent to angle 5, then they're going to be parallel. Why? Because of corresponding angles, right? So we want to get 2 congruent to 5. 2 is supplementary to 3. Okay? And 3 is supplementary to 5. Okay? So angle 2 is congruent to angle 3. Okay? Now let's take a look at this. First of all, we're going to put these in order, which means you're going to write a 1 through 5. That's all you're going to do. They've already given you these. These are a little more difficult because they're all there, but they're all scrambled up. Okay? So obviously we need to use our given information first, right? Which is angle 3 is supplementary to angle 5, right? So that's the easy one. That's number 1. Okay? And what is the reason? Given. That's number 1. So there we've put those in order. Now, it's really not so bad because you know what your last statement's going to be, don't you? You know what number 5 is going to be, don't you?
BD is congruent to F.
BD is not congruent, but it's parallel. So we already know that this is going to be number 5. Okay, this is like teaching you how to do it the wrong way, but that's okay. But why are they going to be parallel if we use this reasoning right here? Because of corresponding angles, right? Okay, so which one of these statements is that? If two lines are cut by a transversal and corresponding angles are congruent, then the lines are parallel. So we already know that that's going to be number 5. So really, when you think about this, you can get partial credit on these things if you just think about what I got to start with and what I have to end with, okay? And now, do a logical progression. Okay, if that, okay? What am I going to say next, though? Angle what? 2 is, now think about your reasoning up here. Angle 2 is congruent to angle 5, then the lines will be parallel. If angle 2 is supplementary to angle 3, so what says angle 2? So that's the next statement up here. Angle 2 is supplementary to angle 3. What statement says that?
If two angles are
No, this one. No, the statement, Joe. Angle 2 is supplementary to angle 3. Isn't that this one right here?
Oh no,
Okay.
it's the bond.
This is the second one, right?
But when angle 2 is supplementary to angle 3, it literally says that on the second to last one. Would you put that one instead?
Would that be
Number
after
two?
though? Because
Well, that would be after because you'd have to say they total. The measures total 180, right? And so they total 180, which is the definition of supplementary. Now we can say they're supplementary, right? I know that sounds ridiculous to you guys, okay? All right. Why can I add those two angles to get 180?
angle addition partial.
Why can I add those? Angle addition partial. That's why I can add the measures of two angles, right? So that's number 2. That angle addition partial is going to get you all the time because you're going to forget about it. because you're going to want to jump right on in there. Okay, so the next thing we can say is, obviously, if that's true, if this is true, then this one right down here must be true, because that's just the definition, isn't it, of supplementary. Supplement definition of supplementary angles, and lo and behold, we only have one left, so that must be number 4, right? Angle 2 is congruent to angle 5. If 2 angles are supplements of the same angle, this is one you're going to forget. Why? 2 angles are supplements of the same angle, then they are congruent, right? That's why angles 2 is congruent to angle 5. A little more difficult because you had to bring in that other reason there that you're not used to using. Okay? All right, now, the next 2, how much time do I have left?
3 minutes.
3 minutes, not enough time, right? Okay.